Caribbean food basically is basically African food. Most of the actual slaves came from West Africa, right? And they were dropped off at different points in the Caribbean. Trinidad is an amalgamation of I should say everyone in the Caribbean, from Grenada to Barbados, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Guyana, who is more South America, but still considered part of the Caribbean. We accept everyone, always with a smiling face. Food breaks down barriers, and then comes music, right? I remember in high school, heavily influenced when I went to North Bronx High School. In North Bronx, there was blacks, Greeks, and Jews. Basically, the dominant people in North Bronx was basically, in terms of the black or African, was Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Bajans were there, also Vincentians, Grenadians. Jamaicans are one of the most nicest people you can find in the Caribbean, right? Their food, the athletes, the no-nonsense, nonchalant way reflects their whole identity, you know? Whereas in Trinidad, it's a microcosm. We're kind of laid-back people. We cool, you know what I mean? We take a long time before you push us to the edge, but once we get to that point, we don't turn back. And that is reflected in our food, right? We like it nice, hot, and spicy. We like colors, we like flavors. We are not shy to try different things. We are open. We have always been an open society. We have always been an open market in Trinidad.
As a first generation West Indian, you know, I'm the first one born here in Canada. My parents, everyone before that was born in Barbados. You know, and they eat healthy just because that's the way it is. You know, I would like to take the credit and say they do it because they're being health conscious, but it's just that's what they grew up around. That's what they're familiar with.
The environment has a lot to do with that as well, right? It's right there.
It's right there. Like,
it's not chocolate bar factories and junk food factories at every corner.
You don't have to leave home to get a mango,
right?
To get a coconut. You have to leave and go to a shop to buy sweets and as they call them in the islands, sweeties, to get stuff like of that nature and chips. So nobody was really eating those things because they eat what's readily available and what was around them. So of course, as they migrated here to Canada, they carried that on with them as well. It was just what they ate. You see, the beautiful thing about rum punch, and a lot of people, this is how it gets a lot of the tourists I see to Barbados at the time when I'm visiting, and everybody's been to Barbados, they know this. The key to, you know, having a good rum punch, but you don't know that there's alcohol in it. If you taste the rum, it's a bit too strong. The key to a good rum punch is that it feels like you're just drinking juice. But by the second or third,
you got to be careful because it's not juice that you're drinking.
It creeps upon you, and by the time you realize what the potency of it, it's already too late. Well, it's one of the earliest distilleries was in Barbados, and I believe this was in the 1700s. Hence why Mount Gay calls their rum the 1703. So rum was something that was throughout the world, but it wasn't really distilled and produced on a mass level the way they started doing it in Barbados in the 1700s. So they have a long history. Barbados has one of the earliest rum distilleries in history. Well, for sure, as I mentioned earlier, there's a big British influence in Bajan cuisine. And one of the most popular dishes on Barbados, it's known on a Saturday, it's all about pudding and sauce on Saturdays. And this comes from the Scottish, from the UK influence, as their dish is haggis. Haggis is like the tripe, it's the belly of the sheep. Mm-hmm. They take the belly of the sheep, it's produced, it's cooked, and then it's served within. They clean out the intestines, they cook the tripe and the interiors, and then they put it back and they serve it like that. Pudding and sauce now, you have the people that do it with the blood pudding. That's the original way. It's a similar thing. You clean out the intestines and you stuff it. Now you get more of, they're using sweet potato and coloring. So they kind of switched it. They've remixed it for modern times. So you get in terms of the pudding, which is what they call the pudding, they do it with sweet potato and coloring, and they serve it more in a square, almost like a little pie kind of thing. They were able to take whatever was left available to them and make delicacies, what have now become delicacies out of it. There's several ties to the influences and the recipes that have come about in Barbados. And pudding and sauce is definitely one of the big ones. And it's a combination of like haggis and head cheese. So like with the pudding and sauce, the sauce part, of course, it is pig. And you have to commend the people of the Caribbean. And this, you see it in all of the islands. They managed to make something out of nothing. And now a lot of these dishes are considered delicacies, right? Once again, it goes back to they used whatever was available to them. So maybe they didn't have the fancy bottled seasonings and they didn't have the salts and the peppers. So they used all of the natural ingredients around them. Ground ingredients like cloves and the nutmegs and the cinnamons. They had access to all of these things. And then going back to the aromatics, there was an abundance of, you can get the onions, you can get green onions and things of that nature. Thyme, lots of thyme was ready available to them. So maybe they didn't have the quote unquote seasonings that the Europeans had at that time. So they used all the natural elements around them, mixed and matched until they found blends that worked well. I remember it was always this thing when you're growing up, it's like, where were you from? I'm like, well, what do you mean? That was always the question, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from here. No, but where are you from? So then, you know what, as a child, it was kind of confusing because it was like, at school and with Canadian kids, it's like, well, where are you from? You're not Canadian.
Right.
But then when
so they assume you must be from somewhere else.
You're assuming you're from somewhere else.
But then other black people in the Caribbean want to know what island you're from.
And the others want to know what island you're from, but that wasn't so much of an issue or factor. Right. But then if you're around the Caribbean, so when with my Canadian friends, you'll say, well, I'm Bajan, I'm Jamaican. When you're around the Trinis, Jamaicans, and the Bajans, they remind you you're a Canadian.
Right.
So you almost feel like, it was, seriously, as a child, it was like, well, what exactly is it? The Canadians don't consider me Canadian, and of course the West Indians don't consider me West Indian. Very important to preserve the cultures, preserve the heritage and the traditions. And my children now, they're second generation Canadian, but I make sure, I made sure they visited Barbados. In the future they're going to go to Jamaica, where their other half is from. And it's very important, I think, to preserve the culture, the traditions, make them have an understanding of it.
A Taste of the Caribbean is brought to you by Pepito Sangria.
Yes, So we worked in Montreal, but we also worked in the Cayman Islands. I also worked in Mexico as well. And being in the Caribbean, you see all these nice hotels, you see these beautiful restaurants, and they're still serving Caribbean food. And we really realized that Montreal would be a great place for that. So then when we came back, that was our mission. Opening a place that is comforting, that gives you the look of a hotel, a really gorgeous place, but comfortable at the same time, and cozy and tropical.
Now, when did you open?
We opened in January of 2018, so this is our third summer. One of the dishes here is the Calypso shrimp, and that's a lot of influence of the Bahamas. Well, the plantains are here, they're between two countries, so we decided to go between Puerto Rico and Haiti. Where the difference is that we actually use green plantains at the place of using sweet plantains. So we fry them twice. That's why we get a different texture in them.
Interesting.
So they're cut up in about 1 inch thick pieces. They're fried once, and then they're smashed. If they're in Puerto Rico, they're smashed very, very thin. If they're in Haiti, they're smashed a little less thin. They're like a little more thick.
But we do a sous chef doing this thing where he smashed them and then like just kind of cut them almost like paper.
Yeah. So we smash them kind of between both, and then once you smash it, you have to use your knife to get it off of your smasher. And then after that, when it's becoming the time to serve it to a client, we fry it again. And then we serve it with a little bit of salt on top.
Food is like an art for them. Food is their passion. Food is life. Food means a lot to the Jamaican people, man. They have a special touch with their food. It's a love. It's a passion. Man, I think it passed down from the Arawak Indians, man, from our history.
Really?
Yeah, from our history, because even for the jerk came from how they used to marinate and how they used to store the pig.
Right.
So they used to bury pig, they used to dig the pits and store them like with coal and for weeks. So they used to dig the pits with the coal and everything and preserve the meat for weeks in the pimento wood.
So you're talking about like a jerk pit?
A jerk pit. So that's what they used to, the Indians used to preserve their meat that way.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's what they used to preserve their meat for weeks, because remember in those days, there's no fridge, there's no ice.
Right.
So, to preserve the pork, it was mainly the pork that they preserved the wild boar.
Which you got to preserve, otherwise forget it.
Exactly. So it's coming out from our history of how we used to preserve our meat, how we used to cook it, and that's where the love comes from, and it's from our history.
The Caribbean food is almost all similar. It's just we have different techniques of cooking it.
Right.
Like, one of the best places to eat in the world is Puerto Rico, right? And that's
Interesting.
And that's a part of the Caribbean.
Right.
but nobody really talked Panama. Amazing food culture. They're very big on
You've been
pork.
both to Puerto Rico and Panama?
I haven't been there, but what I've seen it, and I know, like one of my cooks, his name is JP. Well, he doesn't work for me anymore. He's from Panama, and he's in the food culture, the way they make their rice, their avocado, their fried fish. Like, it's like so what we do as well. And the thing about Caribbean culture, and that's why I like to say Caribbean, is because I feel like the Caribbean should be one continent. And I've always been saying that. Like, a lot of people like say like Jamaicans don't like Haitians and Trinis don't like Bajans. We are one Caribbean.
As far as colonization goes, you've had the Spanish,
And the
you've
Dutch.
had the French,
And the
the
Dutch
Dutch,
was
and the
very-
British.
Yeah.
But then, as far as people go, you had African that came from the transatlantic slave trade. You had Asians that were there, a very big Indian population.
Very big Indian.
And it's
Coolie.
reflective in the food as well.
Exactly. Even Anthony Bourdain, God rest his soul, he even said in one of his other, like, Trinidadian food culture is the best food he's ever had in his life. And he said it on one of his shows. Food is not about like, it's not about all the gimmicks and glamour, man. It's about nostalgia. Well, I look at Asian food, and not all aspects of Asian food, but Asian is very close related to Caribbean, and I'll tell you why. The flavor, the marination, the fresh herbs and ingredients, the love of rice. You can't ask no Caribbean man from any parts if they don't like rice and peas.
Right.
That's the first thing they're eating with any dish. If there's no rice and peas on the table, they're very upset.
But every African nation you go to has got some variation of rice and peas.
Rice.
He said, as far as black people and Asian people go, that exists in different variations,
Exactly.
but everywhere.
We love our rice. We love our long marinations, our green seasonings, our curry. Like Asians have like green curry and certain kind of curries. We don't have those. We have like Jira. We have Guyanese curry. We have Jamaican curry. We have Blue Mountain. We have what's the other one? Chief. There's so many different curries that derive also from the Caribbean, right? So to me, we're very close related in different ways. And we're not close related in different ways as well, but we're very close. I feel we're very, if you look at any other food culture, I would say like the Asian culture is very close to us.
Do you see food as one of the many elements that sort of connects us?
Yeah, I would say food connects us in a lot of different ways. I think that there's two things that can bring love back, right? Food and music, right? And I could do like an oxtail ravioli, and I can understand they're starting from wherever, if they're from Tuscan or they're Sicilian or whatever, but I can understand like where they come from and their struggles through pasta, and they can understand my struggles through oxtail.
So your life basically made who you are professionally, and the way you prepare food, it actually is a reflection of your background.
Exactly, 100%.